And can we have lunch? Can we have dinner? Can we have, these food opportunities to be? That's what this moment is. This moment is about nourishing my body. It's not about doing 7 things at the same time.
As humans, we experience a wide range of crazy emotions, and these emotions can come up during challenging times that seem to hit us out of nowhere. That's the purpose of this podcast, to teach you how to move through these difficult situations and harness these emotions that we feel to be able to create the life that you want. My name's Nathaniel Burke, and I'm the host of the Emotional Fitness Podcast.
All right, Dr. Brent, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm super excited to do this because you were recently able to help Michaela with some digestion stuff and my daughter, which was super powerful. And then even in that short consultation that we had, I learned a bunch, which I was super fascinated. And I know there's a lot of really good research behind, gut health, emotional health, and hormones, all that kind of stuff. So I just wanted to chat with you about what you do and then how your practice impacts emotional health. So maybe you want to just celebrate a little bit what you do, and we'll dive into it.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks for having me on the podcast. It's great to have this format to talk and kind of go nice and deep. I'm a naturopathic doctor. I've been in practice for almost 15 years. We're about a month short as we record of the 15-year anniversary of being in practice. All here in Kelowna, all downtown, Kelowna. And I'm in general practice, so I see people of all ages, different health concerns. Most of the time, it's more on the ongoing, longer-term health concerns. And so in the mental emotional realm, that's something that we're working with every single day, and trying to find out really the root causes. And that's one of my big passions as a naturopathic doctor. I think I get to play that role of medical detective. Let's go looking to see what's underneath, because we've got these symptoms. Here's what a person's feeling, experiencing, and that's very real. But we want to get a bit deeper as to why is that happening? What's physiologically, causing that to come to the surface?
Absolutely. I really like the term you use there, and I think anybody really in the health, fitness, medical field, I think could adopt that as like a medical detective, right? It's looking at what's actually going on and why, and that's actually funny that you said that, because that's actually how I felt when we had that discussion. It was like, oh, right, like we're looking at all these angles and gathering information and really going deep with this, because these little details might seem small now, but it could matter later. So that's really cool that you're doing that. What first got you into this? What was like the drive? Because a lot of guys just go to medical school, or just stop and they just go, it's too much. Like, what was the real push to get you to do this?
You betcha. I came from a football background, which is how we initially, got to know each other. So when I went to university in my undergrad, I went number 1 to play football, number 2 for school, which I don't advise. Nobody should do that. It should be the other way around. That's the advice I give all young people as well. I actually did a business degree. And so while I was doing that, it just wasn't the right fit, but you keep going because it makes sense to keep going and get your degree and everything. So finish that, and with a lot of encouragement and help from my parents, to kind of, stick with it, even, you're not 100% sure what you want to do, but keep doing that. And then really fell in love with the whole healthcare, medical side of things. And a lot of that had to do with my own health, athletic pursuits, feeling at times when I was athletically my best, my gut health was at its worst. And you think about all the pressure there is in a game like football and other sports like that, to either get bigger, to get stronger, to push yourself, and that can often have a cost of your overall health. And so it was that experience that really pushed me to looking into, well, what is health? Like, I'm 22, 23 years old. I'm healthy in an athletic perspective, but not really in how my gut feels and my energy and things of that nature. And that really got me into looking into what is health, and then the naturopathic profession felt like a really great fit, where you get to explore what is health, how do we help people get to health, as opposed to let's study just disease and get disease away. So it's a little bit of a paradigm difference, but I think you're totally right. In all realms of healthcare, we all have the opportunity to be detectives and to interrogate our patients to get to the root cause. So that's a word I like to use a lot. Is I'm gonna interrogate you today and try to figure out what's going on.
Absolutely. It's interesting that, and this is a theme I found with a lot of people during these interviews, is that low moment, that moment that you had where you're like, I'm an athlete, I'm playing football, like I'm fast, I can do all this, why am I having these health issues? You get this low moment, bam, you get hit, and it actually sparks something amazing. So it's interesting that trouble, that struggle, the challenge in your life actually sparked this career that you have now.
Yeah.
Which is kind of a wild thing to think, and a really interesting blessing, really, if you look at it, from a big perspective.
Yeah, it really is, and it's like so many things in life. And if you look at even within a game, and you look at within a season, you look in within periods of life, you need to overcome some adversity, and you need to kind of have some setbacks and have some challenges in your life that then cause you to step back, rethink, and say, how do I want to handle this? Where do I want to go? What do I want to do, with my life? Where can I pursue? So that experience in undergrad, football for me, and just that real conundrum of I don't feel that great in all these other areas, and I'm seeing a lot of my teammates in a similar position because you're training hard, you're trying to change your body. A lot of us are in a game like football and some of these other sports that have a lot of power and physicality to them. You're kind of trying to change your body in order to play these sports, and that can come at a cost. And when you're really young, I remember having these thoughts of, gosh, when I'm old, like 30, I want to be able to go and play touch football with in the league when I'm really old like that, and then when I'm really really old like 40, I want to and you get exposed to people that are in that 40, my gosh, how are they still playing football, or the coaches are like 40 and like, gosh, they can throw the ball pretty good. How does that old man do that? And you're thinking, I don't know if I'm going to be healthy if this is me at 23. What am I going to be like when I'm older?
So what were some of the lessons that you learned during that time? Like, what were some like the because you're having these health issues, what were a few of the things that you had, like that epiphany of like, oh wow, like eating a lot of sugar before a game like wasn't good, or did you have anything like that really kind of hit you like, oh wow, huh?
I think part of it now is like looking back in hindsight into how I live my life in this regard, which is the idea of spacing my meals out. Eating, which is a big part of, I think, what happened to me and other players who are trying to get bigger, is your GI system never has a rest, and so if you look at your GI system, that it's kind of like a river where nutrients are flowing, and we absorb mostly in the small intestine, and then we keep refining and making waste as we go further down the intestines, and then release our waste that way. Every time we eat, we're kind of starting a whole wave of digestion. So if we're eating breakfast, then a snack an hour and a half later, that food from breakfast hasn't moved through our small intestine, and so that causes a lot of opportunity for microorganisms to grow, because they're microorganisms. They're just looking for food, and if food is there, they will follow and they'll go there. So that repetitive eating of meal, snack, protein shakes, 8 eggs, So maybe less about what I was eating and more about the frequency and how I was eating was taking a toll. And so I eat very different now, and encourage that with patients. And it's part of this mindset of having a really healthy, clean digestive tract. Probably we're eating a meal, and then 4 hours or longer later we have another meal, then another 4 hours or longer have another one, and it's a concept of meal spacing. And for those who intermittent fast, it can be very congruent and fit in well with intermittent fasting. But the big premise is we have to clear the small intestine, and then we can eat again. But if the nutrition that we're having could be all good food, but if it's not going through the system and clearing, and we eat again, we just sort of have a pile up, and a pile up feeds bacteria.
That makes sense. So is it, when you say clearing, like going through too quickly, or is it not like going too slowly? I mean, I imagine if you're eating often, it's just trying to get rid of it, and then you're constantly, you're getting all these nutrients, but you're not absorbing anything. Is that what you're? Yeah,
and probably a couple things that I like to illustrate, when I'm talking with patients about this, is we have to think, what is our digestive system? What are the organs? And so, we've got the esophagus to the stomach. most of us can picture that from commercials on TV, Pepto-Bismol, all that kind of stuff, right? Yeah. And then the mystery tends to be the intestines. So for the average person, what is the intestines? What's is the large intestine and the colon? Is that a different thing? Is it the same thing? Yeah. So a lot of mystery around that, right? So if we said the small intestine is from the junction of the stomach all the way to the large intestine, and small intestine sounds like it's small, but the reason it's called small is it's a small diameter, but it's a massive part of the digestive tract. So for most of us, it's 20 to 25 feet long. Yeah, that's where we absorb our nutrients. The tubes are very narrow, but the length and the surface area is way, way bigger than any other digestive organ. Right. And then the large intestine is called large because of a large diameter, but it's about 6 to 7 feet long. Right. That's where about 98 to 99% of the bacteria and microorganisms should live, is in the large intestine. So here's how the problem can kind of start is if the food doesn't clear through the small intestine, which is this long 20 to 25 feet, and I'm eating too frequently, eating too much, and it's just the food and the food waste remains in the small intestine, bacteria can just find their way up from the large intestine, and they should be there, but they shouldn't be up in the small intestine. And so that's that concept called SIBO, which is small intestine bacterial overgrowth. And there's lots of nuances with it, but that in general, that's kind of what we're talking about is if I'm eating too frequently, eating too much, I have a continuous supply of food nutrients for microorganisms in my small intestine, which is not really where they should be. There should be very low levels there.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, because, I think, again, it feels like it wasn't that long ago where I was in the same boat trying to put on muscle, not just as a football player, but doing physique competitions and trying to get into that world. And the demand of how much protein that you're told and that you need to intake is so high. So I guess my question is, if you were a young athlete now, what would you do, or what would be your advice for a young athlete now trying to put on some weight and still have a healthy digestive tract? What would be the kind of the middle ground there, I guess, if you will?
Yeah. Well, one of the good news is we're working with teenagers in our coaching, and so those teenage years into your early 20s, you do have more capacity than when you're in, let's say, 30s and 40s and that. So we can eat a little more frequently than I was talking about there. We can eat a little bit bigger. The body's growing legitimately, growing in many capacities. So there is a little bit of more wiggle room around that, but still that idea of if we just overload the system, this is what happened to me, and I think happens to so many people, is we kind of just let's dump it there and see what sticks. The more I eat, the more I'll absorb.
Of course, something's bound to happen,
and there'll be some collateral damage. But I'll get the physical gains to a large degree, and then whatever the collateral damage is, bloating, gas, fatigue, brain fog, and all that. That's okay.
Yeah, because the goal was to put on muscle. You're okay with this.
Yeah.
Right. But
So advice for young people, which is great. I love working with younger athletes, especially through those teenage years, where how do we put a good strategy in place for eating, and depends what time is their practice right after school. Do they practice at 5 o'clock and there's an opportunity for some kind of snack before? So a lot of individual detail, but you want to really look at that. One of the real common conundrums that comes up is if you're playing sports after work or after school hour and then you finish, let's say relatively late, do I eat or do I not eat? So it's a really simple question that has some complicated answers at times that I'll talk with people in the office to figure out. I've just worked out really hard. It's 9 o'clock at night. This is the only time I can work out on these days. Or you think about sports leagues, like they don't typically happen at 8 in the morning on a Tuesday, unless you're retired. They typically happen after work and stuff. So how do I handle that? I don't want to eat too close to bed. So those kind of details we have to work through, because we want people to play their sports. We want people to be active, whether we're talking young athletes who are trying to excel, or we're talking just the everyday average person who wants to join a soccer league after work or play pickleball.
Trying to build that up. Well, it was, as you were explaining that, it made a lot of sense, and this is where I think the dangers of popular diets, I hate to say the word, but like influencers and these fitness gurus, being that they have, hey, here's a diet, I crushed it, you can do it too. And a lot of them I feel like they mean well, but as you said, it's very individual, and so I think that's maybe the individual part of nutrition, because there is certain rules that apply. We need protein, we need carbohydrates, we need fats, we need our vitamins, we need our minerals. Like, there's certain things that are just everybody, but maybe that's the caveat there, is that everybody's life is a little different. Just because, a diet worked for you, but you're working out at 7 a.m., buddy's working out at 6 or 9 p.m., right? Maybe you shouldn't take the same amount of food at the same time. So it just reinforces the idea of the individualism of it, right? You can have the same rules, but how you apply and where you insert them.
It's a huge part of the paradigm that I work in. The protocol stuff, it really, in my opinion, doesn't work that well. I have a real ickiness for me around working within protocols.
Yeah.
In the digestive realm, you're totally right. There's certain key concepts and key principles, but as far as here's the diet I like everybody to eat, I really don't believe in that. There's so much individuality, and part of it too comes down to if you're working with an adult who's working, maybe has kids, maybe has other responsibilities, coaching, things like that. It has to fit into their lifestyle. Life has to be fun. Life can't be just going from one obligation to the next to the next to the next. That kind of grinds you out as well too. So just factoring all of those individual factors, and one of them could be, some people are morning people, some people are more night people. So the advice you might give a night person could be have some real differences than somebody who's a morning person. A person who can maybe train earlier in the morning, they don't mind waking up at 5 o'clock and going to the gym, versus somebody where that's just never going to be an option. Or they could try it for a month, but we know they're not gonna, it's not fun, they're not gonna sustain it, or the way their work hours are, it just doesn't allow that to happen. You have to be able to adapt and give different advice that way. I think one of the big advices though that I would give younger athletes is, don't try to change your body composition too much. Don't. There's going to be pressure to get bigger, and let's acknowledge that pressure, but don't let it push you too far. Don't let it alter your training too much. And one of the big things that I know you and I see a lot with kids in the ages 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 is play different positions. Train different ways, because you don't know. We could have guys who look like offensive linemen right now, and over the next 5 years, they turn into outside linebackers, defensive receivers. Body composition can change,
especially
quite a
bit.
Puberty time, So big factor. Yeah.
That's a really good point, and I think it just lends to the idea of not getting so focused on one thing, right? It's like looking at your overall health, looking at, if you're helping young athletes, and I do coach young athletes, and you do as well, what's the best for them as an athlete? Not necessarily right now, and I mean that in that, he's, like you said, he's an offensive line, he needs to put on muscle, and he needs to get huge. And it's like, he's 12, and his body can change radically in the next 4 years. So do we really, is that really how he's going to be forever? We're not sure. Let's just make a good athlete. Let's make a well-rounded, healthy athlete, which long-term ties into what you're saying, right? It's not trying to force these things. Yes, here's the goal, but let's try to force it. Let's try to build on it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And, another piece of advice I'd say, too, is if we're talking more the adult population, 20s, 30s, 40s, and beyond, is most of us, as you look back, we actually need less food than we thought. And then you'll have examples.
I'm a hungry guy, so I'm a little standoffish.
There's factors like we can overeat out of not recognizing when we're actually full. So there can be simple nuances like that. Like the signals our digestive system will send us around when are we satiated, when are we not. There's a bit of a delay. So that's a well-known scientific concept of by the time most of us are feeling like we're full, we probably were there a few minutes ago, if not longer. So
that's a good point. Yeah.
So looking at it from that portion control side, if portion control is a problem, for some people it is. Other people, portion control is never really the problem. The problem might be more frequency. Looking at the idea that how often do I eat out of just like routine, like did I really need to eat or not? So this comes up a lot with a lot of the trades workers that I work with, construction, things like that, where it's very regimented. We start at a certain time,
lunch at 11 or 12.
Yeah, the whistle blows and there's a snack break, and it's 15 minutes, and then there's lunch, and it's very regimented. How many times are we? Well, it's a break. I eat. Yeah. Especially if you're not
automatic.
If you're not a smoker, it's like it's a smoke break. Well, I don't smoke. What am I going to do? And then you have want to have a bite of something. Yeah. Did I really need that bite of something? And a good question to ask ourselves at any juncture is this serving me? If I'm going to drink this, eat this, do this, is this serving me? Or is it not serving me? Is it helping me or not helping me? It's not a bad thing to look at as you're analyzing your day-to-day lifestyle, especially over a bigger period of time. Do I have any habits that you really want to question and just analyze and say, I wonder if that's actually serving me or not. So I like asking that question of patients when we talk about our routines and what we just sort of take for granted as it is what it is. Well, is it? It's why not ask that question?
Yeah, I really like that. And to be honest, the scene from I love the scene because my family has this routine where when we're bored, what do? We go to the fridge, and it's from The Grinch. And he goes, "Am I just eating because I'm bored?" and so, but it made me think of that. And it's like, you're right. How many of us do that? How many of us just go like, I have nothing to do. I'm just going to eat. And you're like, well, do we really need to? And again, I like to eat. Like, I love food. I'm a big foodie guy. I always say it goes that. Look at why are we eating? And if you are just somebody that just like, I just love to just have things in my hand. Okay, well, and you're eating. Well, what are you eating? Are you eating a handful of chips? Are you eating some like vegetables? Are you eating something that's maybe a little bit healthier that you probably need to get in anyway? Looking at the quality of it. And I really, like you said, bring awareness to it. Because how many times... I mean, what do they say? Our subconscious runs like 95% of our day.
Yeah.
Well, the whistle blew. I'm just eating. What do you mean? Oh, well, it's 12. I just eat, right? And so there's a good example of our subconscious kicking in versus being aware and present, going, wait a minute, I'm actually not hungry. That's actually something I've been doing recently. Is looking at my day and going, well, it's 12. Am I hungry? Am I actually hungry? I'm okay. I'm good. Or sometimes with kindness, maybe let's have a smoothie or whatever. Just trying to be very aware of that and not just fall into a pattern of just eating.
Yeah. And kind of on that subject, I always like to say how we eat might be more important than what we eat, or at least of equal importance. So,
I like that.
Everybody's individual, and so some patients will come in, and when they tell you what they're eating, you're impressed. Wow, this is very good food, a lot of organic stuff. They're spending good money on good food and very, very, very thoughtful on what they're eating. And then you start asking, well, tell me about when you're eating. Just tell me more. And then it becomes kind of clear that how they're eating is really more the problem. And you have to bear in mind when people come in, they're not coming in because they're feeling great.
Everything's healthy and perfect. I just want to hang out with you.
Yeah. So the majority of patients coming to see me are highly motivated to get better. They're highly motivated to do a lot of the work on their own, and they've been doing that. So their health IQ is pretty high, and yet they still are not feeling the best, and they're coming in for advice. And you can imagine this is a common thing. If I'm working hard to get better and I'm hitting a wall, at some point you're going to want to work with somebody to figure out what is this wall that I'm hitting. And so it's a really good one to look at. Am I just, as soon as I'm done my morning, it's lunchtime, am I just throwing food in because I've got a tight lunch break, versus the idea of, okay, I've finished my work, let me take a moment, I'll go to do some kind of routine. I'll go to the washroom, wash my hands, take a moment to breathe. There's some poses that I'll show people to do, or stretches, things like that. Bit of a routine that just sort of says the work morning is over. It's now time to get into digestion mode, and that can't be necessarily just a quick switch that we flick over.
Yes.
Do I need a few moments just to kind of get that into that routine? And just talking with people about, are you eating lunch at your desk, checking your email? And I think in life, the more that you're caught in the middle of things, the less good you do any of those things. You become a jack of all trades, master of none. And can we have lunch? Can we have dinner? Can we have, these food opportunities to be, that's what this moment is. This moment is about nourishing my body. It's not about doing 7 things at the same time. It's about nourishing my body.
I really like that, and it ties back into kind of our talk before about awareness and presence, because how many people that yourself included, myself for sure, I'll sit having lunch and I'll go, my phone, I'll be like, my emails, I'll check, and I'm like, oh my God, and we talked about it and went, right, I don't need to be doing this right now. Yes, it's important, but really, if I can't take 30, 20 minutes, 15 minutes to eat food, what kind of life do I have, right? I don't need to do 17 things at once. I can just sit down and be present with this food and enjoy it.
Yeah.
Right? And just that alone, there's studies that show even just that alone and being present and being thankful and having gratitude for your food will actually have more nutritional benefits than if you weren't doing that.
Yeah. Because I look back, and I think we all are probably like this, especially like the younger athletes who are trying to get bigger for hockey, football, and sports like that. Is we take for granted some things and we focus over focus on others. We over focus on the amount coming in, and we just take for granted that when it goes in, the body will just
figure it out.
just do it, right? And then if you are not feeling the greatest, like bloated all the time, bathroom issues, things like that, how long do you deal with that before you start saying, maybe there's an issue there? What tends to get the more athletic people is if their athletic gains stop. They can deal longer with feeling bloated than they can with my bench presses not going up. I've been there and I've done that. That's the thing that gets us to seek help versus the digestive issues that are there. But what we're talking about, with checking email, how we're eating and everything, it makes me think of, I had this cool example back in the spring, so let's say 6 months ago. I'm here in my office. I wanted to go to the coffee shop to grab something, and I think it was an Americano. I wanted to have a nice coffee from my favorite coffee shop, and I walk out of my office, go to walk down the stairs, and I feel my pockets. I think, I don't have my phone, and I turned back and took like 2 or 3 steps, and then stopped and said, I'm just going there for like 5 minutes. Coming back, what do I need my phone for? I like the people who work there.
I don't need to be on my phone.
Why not have an interaction? Why not talk? And even if I'm just standing there, just to stand there, why not? And so it's a stupid little example of challenging some day-to-day habits. It doesn't really affect your digestion, but you can apply that to other things that can affect it. Is this serving me?
Yes.
When I go to the coffee shop, and we all do this, we're all standing there on our phone like this, and we're all adjacent to each other. The people working there.
Not one word is said to anybody.
Yeah. And you never know what kind of conversation you can strike up. You never know if you're going to learn something, or brighten somebody's day, or they're going to brighten your day. So why not do that? So if you apply that more to the digestive realm, you look at areas where this is what I do. It is what it is. But let me challenge that. And especially if you're hitting plateaus. So let's say it's a strength and athletic plateau that you're hitting, and the feeling is, I need to eat enough. Like, Brent, I'm really concerned. If you're saying I should eat less, I'm having difficulty putting weight on. And then I could say, well, how long have you done this current strategy? Years. Well,
it's not working.
What do you have to lose by maybe let's focus on the efficiency of how you're eating versus just the sheer quantity, because potentially what's going on is the quantity coming in is relatively high, but the efficiency is pretty low, and that's the blockade. And then sometimes you can just see people having the light bulb go off of like, holy crap, maybe this guy's got something, maybe this could, I've been eating, I eat way more than my family and my friends. I'm not getting bigger. Maybe it is the efficiency. Maybe there's some bugs down there that are, stealing my food and making me, need to eat more. And so that's kind of stuff I love to roll with people.
Totally, and it's going back to being that detective, right? And really looking at all those angles. And one thing I want to touch on, even with the phone thing, was that they did a study, and I thought it was so fascinating. It was one thing that helped almost any disease, you name it, any problem, was human connection.
Mm-hmm.
Human connection helped. It goes back to the movie Patch Adams was the movie, right? And I think it was based off a real human, a real doctor, but it was that human connection. And so if you are having these digestion issues, whatever, it's like having real human connection with people, smiling at someone, saying hello, commenting on somebody's shoes. They did another study, and even was it serotonin? No, dopamine. No, which one's the love chemical?
Oh gosh, dopamine's your feel good. They all overlap. So if we just say like a neurotransmitter, you can't go wrong.
Yeah, one of those. I can see it in my head, but I can't say it. But either way, they did a study, and when people witnessed, and this is why I loved it, was because oxytocin.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Oxytocin was released when somebody, if I said, hey, Brent, I really like your shoes. You got great shoes. Mm-hmm. You feel oxytocin. I feel oxytocin. It feels good.
Yeah.
That actually helps us as humans, our digestive tract, in a huge range of things. Not only I felt it, you felt it.
Yeah.
The crazy part is when somebody witnessed somebody else doing the kindness, they felt it as well.
Yeah.
And so here's my point, is that if we're putting away our phones and trying to be more present and trying to really just connect with people and just be present, as we talked about before, with their food and with around us, it has a huge range of health benefits beyond the things that we're even really aware of. So that's something that I really like, because it ties into the emotional health. Because if I put away my phone, if I'm present eating my meal, and I'm just looking around, and maybe I'm by myself at the coffee shop, but somebody sits next to me and I strike up a conversation, I'm like, hey, how you doing, whatever, have this conversation, I feel good about it, and they feel good about it, and that actually helps my digestive tract.
Yeah. And
that helps me feel good.
Yeah.
So I want to transition a little bit into how, because it is the Emotional Fitness Podcast, and how emotional health ties into your gut health, ties into your hormonal health. Like, what are some things that you see often that you think people need to really be aware of?
Yeah. I don't think it ties in at all. No. See, a good laugh might help us have a better. Yeah.
Exactly.
No, it's an amazing world. We know this ancient wisdom, traditional Chinese medicine, Ayurvedic medicine, and even old school Western medicine. We all know that there's a huge connection between the gut and our emotional health and our brain, our nervous system. Even cliche phrases like "go with your gut."
Yes.
Why did that phrase ever come about? Why does that phrase, still get used? It's because there's a truth to it.
Yeah.
I think you could analyze almost every cliche and say the reason that these cliches existed and still exist is because there's got to be a universal truth to it. Mm-hmm. And so we've known this for hundreds to thousands of years, and the science is over these last couple decades just keeps rolling out confirmation that our gut really does affect our mental emotional health, our brain health, focus, concentration, and things of that nature. So that's a really fun aspect to work with, because there's often a layer when people come in of depression, anxiety, and one that I whatever the name that we want to call this, but just overwhelmed or difficulty coping with stress. We live in a modern world which has some beautiful things, but it comes at the cost of having to navigate a lot of stress. Yeah. We most of us have to work. Most of us, have to deal with some not nice people. Most of us have to pay the bills, and whether that's the mortgage or the rent, the food bill, things like that. So we get to experience some amazing things that our ancestors didn't get to, experience.
You get a range of fruits and vegetables that you can get anywhere, right?
Yeah. But it comes at a cost, and I think our nervous system, our GI system, how it's tied in, we're kind of spend a lot of our time in fight or flight. So the technical name for that is the sympathetic nervous system.
Yes.
So fight or flight, we're dealing with things. This conversation is a really nice conversation, but we're engaged. We're a bit into fight or flight because we have to be thinking, we have to be engaged in this back and forth side of things, versus and that would be a lot like how most of us probably spend our workday. hopefully we like work. And we get to have nice interactions like this, but we're on, we're thinking. And then we shift into like it's lunchtime now, or I'm going home, it's dinner time, and it would be really nice, can we dial this closer to the parasympathetic system?
Yes.
So you've kind of got your sympathetic, which is fight or flight, and then parasympathetic, which is rest and digest and repair.
Yeah.
And
feed and breathe's a term I like to use too.
There we go.
It's very vivid. You're like, oh yeah, okay.
yeah. So these core images, right? So we can't live 100% over here, but can we dial over into this when it comes time to eating, a little bit before we eat, while we're eating, and then afterwards. And that plays a huge role in how we break down our food, and then what kind of bacteria and yeast and microorganisms, what kind are they, where do they live, and then let's think about things like serotonin and these neurotransmitters that maybe in Western viewpoint we didn't fully understand where they were being made, and we maybe overemphasized over the years that these neurotransmitters are from our neurological system. And then we've realized, oh, hang on, a lot of these are made in our gut.
That's right.
A lot of them are made not by us, but bacteria living inside of us. And that's one reason we rely on having a healthy gut to then have a healthy mentality, mindset, stress coping mechanisms.
So I like that. Do you want to recap that again? Because I think it's really powerful, and it's something that I think people could miss, is that, I'm sure I'm saying this right, so serotonin, right, that's what makes us feel good. One of our feel-good hormones is produced in our digestive tract.
Yeah.
So if we are in that stress, right, in our fight or flight too much, we're not able to produce that.
Yeah. It would hamper that. One reason it could hamper that is if we don't have the right mix in the microbiome, and so the microbiome, that term has really become a buzz term in the last, let's say, 5 to 10 years, and for good reason. It's that's really where all of that bacterial life is living, is in the large intestine. 98-99% is there, and so you think of it over a long-term effect. If I'm eating the wrong things, I'm eating the wrong timing, I'm dealing with stress, factors like that, I don't really have the right mix of the right bacteria and microorganisms. Therefore, what I'm relying on them to do doesn't get done in the ways that I need it to be done, and that's one major reason why the serotonin would be lower. Another reason we could look at is, what about in a shorter realm of time? Could I have today I just don't make as much because of factors that I ate too much sugar, which fed more yeast, and then we had this change today that it's not the bigger picture, but it's a short term type of change. So where I work most of the time is the longer term, because that's ultimately what we want to string together is
one decision doesn't change everything, it's the habits.
We want to reinforce a good, healthy microbiome.
Right. So when you talked about sugar there, I'm curious more about that. Like, what are some of these, let's say, some of the bad habits that you're seeing people coming in with that are having emotional, depression, anxiety, just struggling with life? Are you finding correlation in there, or rather, what correlations are you finding there? And is like a lot of sugar one of them, or what are some things that people can work on there?
I think if you go back to a core concept of I'm feeling low, energetically and or emotionally low, but I'm feeling a void. I'm feeling a current problem. You could argue the best way to get out of that in this moment is to reach for something that picks you up. Caffeine, sugar, salt, something like that. But doing that repetitively, what it kind of does is yo-yos you. It keeps the void there, because these are the things that don't really fix the void physiologically. So you could look at it a lot like blood sugar and what happens in our physiology when our blood sugar drops. We feel some kind of void. We may get spacey. Have you ever been hangry before?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So spacey, hangry, fatigued, things like that. And then what's the best thing to do at that moment? Well, I think we would all argue it's not to go reach for sugar, because sugar is just going to spike you up. But if you do reach for something sugary, especially let's say you go by the coffee shop and you grab the sweetest, most caffeinated thing that Starbucks or the others,
all the things.
It's like, I love it. I love my pumpkin spice latte that's like super sweet, or
6 pumps of sugar in it.
So then I go up, but then I'm going to start going down, and so that perpetuates that. So one of the things I would say is I love to have some treats in my life, and one of the great joys of being an ND is to help people have some treats. So if you love a pumpkin spice latte, one of my goals is to help you have that in some kind of moderation that you can handle.
Enjoy it.
I really want people to have a resilient body, a resilient physiology, and so what that means is, most of the time we're going to do the right things that will create that resiliency, create a good healthy microbiome, create good healthy stress coping mechanisms. And if I have that, that means I can take vacation. That means I can have a cheat moment. I can have my treat. And for some of us the treat is a pumpkin spice latte. For somebody else it's a cheesecake, and somebody else it's some chips.
It's a cheeseburger, you name it.
Yeah. So I think that's a lot of where this goes to, and I think that's a lot of where the individualization, working one-on-one with patients. I don't think this type of stuff will ever go out of style. In fact, it may be coming back into style more than ever, because of we can Google everything. We can YouTube everything.
It's too much information almost.
It's almost too much. What is true? What's true for me? And you mentioned this about, let's say really good and well-intentioned personal trainers and nutritionists saying, this is what I did, it worked for me.
Here's what's working for all my clients.
And what worked for you will work for a portion of your clients, but it won't work for probably more of them. But if you can individualize, so if you're a healthcare practitioner and you can don't just take what you do and say this works for everybody, but individualize that, meet a patient where they're at based on their own unique physiology and characteristics, demand in life, that will be huge.
And one thing I think is super important there is their belief. And that's something that people don't ever really, I find, don't recognize or talk about enough, is their belief in what they're doing. And so they did a study years back. It was this guy, I don't remember his name, but it was back in the 70s. This guy had 16 personalities living in. Wild. He was like a totally crazy, unique thing, but he had 17 completely different personalities. 16, sorry. And 15 out of the 16 personalities of this one man were deadly allergic to orange juice. Deadly allergic.
Yeah.
One of them absolutely loved orange juice. And so they would be studying him, and they'd be talking to psychologists and all this stuff. And sometimes he'd have a switch where the orange personality with orange juice would come out, or that liked orange juice would come out, and he would want orange juice. They'd give him orange juice. 0 reactions. A few minutes later, 10, 20 minutes later, if that other personality came out, hives everything. And so my point there is that's how powerful our brain is. And so I've seen this time and time again of where people, because I was in the fitness industry for so long, is that they would convince themselves that they had a bad weekend and therefore they gained all this weight. And maybe they did, but what I'm getting at is that that's so powerful. And if you believe something to work, that it's going to work, just like the placebo effect, Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about all the time, right? It has power. If you don't think it's going to work, that has power. So if you have this idea that if you eat those chips, you're going to gain 20 pounds, or you're going to instantly, your diet's out the window, stress hormones go up, you've explained how bad that is, now you're having this crazy reaction because you believed in it. So the cool part about it, and this is why I want to bring it up, is I think that you can use that as a tool. A very powerful tool. It's doing this can actually really help me in getting that buy-in and getting that belief, because if your brain believes it, it'll create it. So it's not to discredit if you believe that you can eat cheeseburgers all day long and never eat anything else, and you'll be the healthiest human on earth. No, but it does have an impact.
Yeah, these things have an impact. A couple things that expand on that is, if you can only go so long. So think about the fitness industry, and if your belief is very, very strong, but something's wrong in your physiology. So what I'll see in practice a lot, because again, people are coming in, they're working hard, they're really good intentioned people, but something's off. And they know something's off. A lot of times they'll come in and say, men and women, any age, something that feels off with my hormones. That's as far as they've got to, but something's off that way. One of the ways this can manifest is I can never get momentum and sustain my exercise program. And so let's apply that maybe to somebody who's trying to lose weight. They're trying to change their body composition. They're trying to change their eating habits as well. They just know they've slipped into rut the last few years. This is not who they are, not who they want to be. Now's a good time to make changes. And the willpower is really strong. But if the willpower is strong, and let's say testosterone's low, or let's say iron is low, let's say DHA, which feeds all these hormones, is low, it's been burnt out, then willpower gets you to the gym a few times. Willpower gets you to make your own meals, for a few weeks or so, but you hit a dead end of physiology, and that's a huge thing, because as a healthcare practitioner, you want to really have a lens on what's a short-term plan here, what's an intermediate plan, what's a longer-term plan, and the intermediate and longer has to factor in. We can't just have this person run off of willpower. We have to make sure that some fuel is actually
Supporting
there.
them.
And cars, you can have a gas car, you can have an electric car, you can have a gas electric hybrid, but that's about your options. I guess diesel, but we'll call that gas as well, right? But vehicles don't run off of 3-4 different types of fuel, let alone 30 or 40 or 50. Whereas the human body, we have so many different types of fuel. So that's where looking at it individually for people and finding out, here's what's going on. Here's what you've told me. It looks like there's some fuel deficiencies going on. There's some imbalances, neurotransmitters, hormones, whatever happens to be. Let's run the right tests. Let's go looking, because what this person doesn't need from me is a lecture. They don't need me to wag my finger and say, Nathaniel, get your butt to the gym. Or Nathaniel, stop driving home and on your way home picking up fast food.
That's a good point.
That if anything is offensive, to a patient.
It ties into it. Sorry to interrupt, but it ties into that I'm bad. So now it ties into their belief. Oh, you're right. I'm messing up and I can't do this. Spikes the cortisol again, and then you have a whole slew of other problems. So I think that's a really good point. That I think sometimes I want to say just people, because we got so much information in our face, Instagram, Facebook, you name it, and if you're following a lot of fitness people telling you all these things, and you're, I'm not doing that, I'm not doing this, I'm not doing this, and then all of a sudden they get down on themselves, even though that's, or and then they come to, let's say they go to somebody like you who doesn't have that practice, that awareness, that just people skills to go, hey, wait a minute, this person's down, I don't need to come down on them anymore. I need to actually lift them up and make them feel good about what they're trying to do.
Do that. I got to make sure I don't blow smoke up their butt.
Exactly.
But
that's a good point. That's a really good point.
It's like a lot of things. You can make an error on this side, and you can make an error on that side. So we just want to interrogate properly, ask the right questions. Figure out what is the best version of the truth. What's the closest version as we work our way through. Where does this person really need support? And I tend to find it's less on the motivational side of things, and it's more on something's missing physiologically, something's out of balance, and you can see how things become a vicious circle going in the wrong direction, and then we can see how what's really fun in my job is to see it go in the opposite direction.
Upwards,
so we can all think of times, whether it's ourselves or loved ones around us, they're not eating that well, they're having too many treats, maybe too much alcohol, not getting to the gym, it turns into
bad
not
sleep,
being emotionally happy, bad sleep, don't have enough energy, and think of it all that way. Well, how do you break into that? And a lot of times it's not yelling at the person or giving them a lecture, and it's really about helping them figure out what is missing. And what I would add to it, because I think these are huge concepts emotionally when people go to see a healthcare practitioner, is the majority of patients I'm working with, especially when they come in and they'll list depression or anxiety or something on the mental emotional plane, is they've done a lot of counseling, they've worked with a lot of good people, and they've developed good tools. And the problem,
that's huge. The
problem might be less about having good tools, and it's more about, I'm not implementing my tools. So think about that layer, right? Do I just not have good tools and I need to develop good tools, versus I've developed good tools. I could have a few more, but I've got good tools. My problem is when stressors happen at this point in the day or this point in the week or with this person, I lose it, and as humans, we really have two reactions when we're overwhelmed, and it's either attack or pull away. you know, and neither one are ones that we're really happy with or proud of. And especially the more that we've worked on counseling, we've seen good people, we've developed these good stress coping techniques, the more that we have that in our toolkit, and then we go and we explode, or we just like crumble and run away. In the aftermath, a couple hours later, we look back and then beat ourselves up. You know, so it almost hits you twice. You know in the moment you didn't handle this well, and then a couple hours later, you deal with the aftermath of being upset with yourself. And a lot of that is in that population of people we're talking with who have good tools. Where I come in is to figure out why are you not employing those good tools? Because you don't need another good tool per se. You know, on a stress coping side of things, is your blood sugar crashing? So mentioning hangry before, you know, that's maybe the most basic way to look at this. I get hangry, and then I can't handle stuff at work, and I get frazzled, and I run away or I yell. You know, how do I get out of this? And then we can all imagine part of the answer is eating a bit more steady, preventing the blood sugar from crashing. So that's a nuance. That's an everyday practical thing that is great to work with. And then you can just see the lights go on in a patient and say, oh, maybe this is the angle I need to be thinking about it with. Yeah, because I'm not employing my mechanisms in real time on demand when I need it. And I'm on a long answer here, but I like to think of it as do I react to something or do I respond? And what's the difference between those two words? Well, one way to look at it is a reaction tends to be more visceral. It tends to be more attack or withdraw. Response.
Emotional.
And response, these things can happen in the splits of second, but a response tends to be you say something maybe mean to me, which you never would, but let's just say you did, you know, and then I have to, in a split second, calculate, respond with something, versus you say something mean to me and then I just
exactly. No, that's a really good point, and I really like how you brought it all back into the idea, even something as simple as just blood sugar, right? And how that can play on our emotions and how we can have those big reactions. And something I wanted to just touch on quickly was, you said it really well, is that looking at where the person is and being that detective, not coming down them emotionally, but looking at what's the plan now, what's the intermediate plan, and what's the future plan. And this is where I think a lot of people get confused, and this is where they need somebody like you. They need professionals, because, well, my friend said I should just do this, and I should just forget about all this and go here. And you're like, okay, that's great. Your friend is like gone through all this. Your friend is 4 years removed from all these problems. They got a really good lens, and they've built all these tools and resilience, and their health's under control and all this. They're at step like 12. You're at step 1, right? Well, my other friend said this. That's great, right? Like, so, or I read this on the internet, or this Instagram influencer said this. It's like looking at where they're at now, and that's where having somebody like you, being the detective, being that, sometimes even the anchor of like, these are good things, just not yet. So you're almost being a coach, really, is what it is.
There's an element of that,
Is, hey, yes, I understand that, and these are good strategies, but if you can't crawl, why are we trying to sprint? Right? And that's where we're at right now, is we need to, and thankfully, I think where you're at is that, or where the patient that you're getting, they already take action because they're coming to see you. Right? They understand they need to do more, which is nice. So now you're not dealing with somebody that is completely like, well, it's not up to me, you got to figure it out. They're like, no, I'm taking ownership of my health, my wellness, my well-being, like all these things. And now you can really like get together with them and come up with a plan. Which I think is really where the magic happens. Right.
That plan, following through on that plan. I always have tissues in the office. And so the first visit and the second visit are the most likely to utilize tissues.
Get that emotional release.
Exactly, So one of the big things is, you think about a first visit, again, the interrogation happens, asking the right questions. And this could be a patient's first experience to have something like an hour with some kind of professional who
actually cares,
who cares,
but harsh,
but but is asking enough questions.
Yes.
In our conventional system in North America, there's so many pressures. It's not fair on doctors, not fair on patients. There's a lot of problems.
There's a big list of people they need to help.
Yeah,
I get,
lots of constraints. So the time is a missing ingredient in a lot of healthcare, right? Because I know a lot of doctors, family doctors, specialists. They're lovely, caring people.
Yeah.
In this day and age, nobody goes into any form of healthcare, like medicine. You don't go to medical school to become rich.
Yeah.
You go, especially think about you're in high school, you're in undergrad, like at that stage, if you'd go get a business degree, you wouldn't really. So I really think almost everybody in healthcare is coming mostly from some really good, genuine places, and then you hit all these constraints in the system. So somebody like myself who can spend more time and do these, I'm very thankful for the luxuries that I have. But the tissue side of things is, for some people, this is the first time they've been able to be truly heard, have the space and the environment to be heard and not be too quickly heard and then a lecture, or only one complaint right now and then we'll work on it. And just getting some of this stuff off their chest, can often bring tears. Another thing is that on a second visit especially, you get some test results back and you show your DHEA really, really low. You're running on fumes and willpower. Your ability to turn DHEA, which is the mother hormone, into cortisol, into testosterone, into progesterone, estrogen, whatever the hormones are. If your reservoir is so low that you have enough to be alive, as evidence of you walking in here today, but you don't have enough to sustain the stress coping response and the energetic response that you need for your circadian rhythm through the course of the day. So you hit fractures, you hit symptoms. That's what you're feeling. As you're explaining this to people, that's often where the tears start coming down, because it's not in my head. I'm not effed up, and unfortunately so many people carry that with them that nobody knows what's wrong with me.
That's so hard.
Blood work has all been normal. Like, my iron is good. Docs run blood work over the years. It's in my head, and I hate that. I really dislike people carrying that around, or people being told, it's in your head. It's something you got to work on. Phrases like that, because then they just turn it into their own version of it's in my head, and then let's look and see. There's a lot of fuels that you need. There's a lot of things that come from the gut, the serotonin amongst other things. If these things are off, no wonder you're feeling, what you're feeling. And you have good coping mechanisms. I know the people that you work with. You got good coaches. You've got good, counselors and stuff. So, yeah.
I really agree with that, and like that, and I think it's needed more, because going back to a conversation earlier, it's just that human connection. We talked about earlier ancient practices. The Greeks used to have, they used to, their doctors, the first thing they would do in any problem they had, didn't matter what it was, they'd sit down and just talk to somebody for like an hour or 2 hours, and most of the time they felt better.
Yeah.
Which is wild, because in a society where we have all this connection, computers, emails, texts, social media, all this stuff, most people actually, when they do studies, have never felt more alone, right? Yeah. And we already know that we need human connection, and one of the biggest, deepest desires of humans is to be acknowledged. And acknowledge on a like isn't that much. Acknowledge face to face is huge. And so if you're able to do that, especially as a practitioner, what you're doing, I feel like just that alone, even just that first talk, I can tell you my daughter felt way better after we had that talk. I felt good because I was like, right, we actually went over a bunch of stuff.
We got a plan. We have a framework. Yeah.
We did some, and it was educational. There's a lot of questions, and even just that alone, it was like, oh, right, somebody's actually caring for me beyond me having a broken arm and needing it casted, right? Or beyond some major trauma. So that alone, I think is so powerful and definitely needed. And I don't know, part of me just thinks, I wonder, if you could do a study of how much success people have just from that first visit to their, you know what I mean, and never saw you again. Like, how much success
Yeah.
would they have just because you sat and talked and asked them questions? And more importantly, I've had experienced this doing my own counseling, is having that emotional release. A good friend of mine talks about this, is that emotional release. It's like, it's just like anything else. Like, we don't hold in our pee forever. You don't hold in your stool forever. You can't. Like, it's crazy.
I never thought of it that way, but yeah.
Right? But he explained that way, and I did a podcast, and I'm like, dude, that's genius. You're right. How many times we just need that emotional release where we just cry, and then after, like, huh, my stomach feels pretty good. You know, and like, because you had something like you to ask all those questions, and yes, they do need help with all these things. They do need help with getting the hormones and getting the right nutrients and getting these things. Absolutely. But sometimes that's just like the first, like,
Yeah.
Oh, okay. And now this is gets you like kind of calm down. Okay. Now we're gonna really like go from, and I think that's where people really want, especially coming here, is we're not surviving. Now you can thrive.
Yeah.
Right? Going from, you could keep toughing it out, but do you really want to? No, that's why people come here, is they want to thrive. They don't want to just like get by because they're already getting by. They want to come to somebody like you because they want to thrive.
Yeah.
They want to feel good. They want to have that energy. They want to have their sex hormones up again. They want to be able to sport, you name it, right? So I really think that's cool that you're doing that. And it's funny that, you have your tissues out and you're ready for that. And it's good practice, and more importantly, it's just being a good human.
Yeah.
It's just being there for people, right? Which I think is so awesome. And emotionally, that's what we need.
Yeah.
So, this is a good talk. I feel like we could keep going. I think there's so much more to unpack here, but I think for now that was so good. And I really appreciate your insight on this, because so many people need this. So, is there any like last words of wisdom or any last little tidbits that you think that people listening would need to know, or just something you want to share that maybe we didn't talk about yet?
I like reinforcing some of these concepts. Is this serving me? You know, I think that's a really good thing. Just like we can all have examples from sports. Think about golfers who are great golfers, but they had to reinvent their swing. This happens in multiple sports where, you know what, this has gotten me this far, and that's why I'm pretty good at what it is I'm doing. But I know to get to where I'd really ultimately like to get to, I've got to kind of reinvent my swing a little bit.
Yeah.
So that can be one way of, you look at your life, your career, their success, and most people listening here, there's going to be lots of things they should be proud of and be successful. But we all are going to carry some elements and some baggage of, maybe I need to rethink this thing or that thing. So on a nutrition side of things, on a health side of things, really taking a look and seeing how I eat, not just what I eat, when I eat. One thing that I was going to mention too that comes up a lot, especially when you have kids, is how many 40-ish-year-old dads that I have. You're not there yet, but how many 40-ish-year-old dads come in and have a lot of digestive issues. And one of the big problems is their kids can crush a bowl of cereal right before going to bed, and that's what an 8-year-old kid can do. And you as a dad are thinking, well, why can't I have that bowl of cereal too? And good little day-to-day example of like, that's not going to work for the 4-year-old dad or mom. You can't crush a bowl of cereal at 8 o'clock at night and not have some consequences later on. So just looking at those habits, how frequently I eat, how I'm eating, is my mindset there? Should I have some kind of routine before and maybe after I eat, so that I don't just go work right into eating, checking my email, and then as soon as I'm done eating, I'm right back to work? Can I get some space, some time? Can I get more in the parasympathetic, the rest and digest? And what did you call that mode?
Feed and breathe.
Feed and breathe, kind of mode, And go some places without a cell phone, and talk with people, have those human interactions. And most of the time we're kind of afraid of what other people might be thinking, and they're thinking the same thing. I wish somebody would talk to me. That's what we're thinking.
I hope nobody notices this, but it's like everybody's all thinking the same thing. We're all inward focused, don't realize like, it's actually okay. Right.
And maybe last piece of wisdom that I wanted to get to is, when you have a plan, then part of that plan makes you feel good because there's a plan, and it's a flexible plan. When you're working with somebody, whether it's a counselor, a naturopathic doctor like myself, I love using the term, we have a plan, but it's an adaptable and it's a flexible plan based on how you're progressing. Some people, this initial plan gosh, it's working really, really well, and we don't really have to modify it that much over long stretches. Other people, we hit a bit of a wall. We gotta, so knowing that you have a plan and it's a flexible plan, that's really important. And part of a flexible plan can be enjoy some treats. And one of the worst things in life is to have a treat and not enjoy it, because you don't know that you're allowed to enjoy it. Yeah. So if
you're hit twice with it now,
you're going to get hit twice.
Double negative with it.
Yeah. So if you're allotting in this, it's a Friday. We're going to hang out with some friends, and I'm going to have a cocktail or two. Yeah. Enjoy that cocktail or two because it fits into your plan, as opposed to not having a plan and you never know. It's a lot like if you're spending money and you don't know if you can afford to spend that money. There's always this stress that's there. Whereas if you've got your handle on your budget and you know what's going on, I can afford to buy that thing. Then you have a chance to enjoy that thing. Yeah. But if you don't know if you can afford it, then you're always living with that stress. So that would be one of my words of wisdom, is to know if you can afford this food or this toy, and if you can't, then you shouldn't do it probably, and if you can, then it means you can actually enjoy it, and the treat is a treat as opposed to the treat being not a treat.
And then you feel guilty about it. But that's a really good point. I'm glad you ended on that, because that's like just I'm like, again, being in the fitness industry, I saw that all the time, so I think that's definitely missing. And like you said, enjoy it when you do have it, right? Because you said best, and you want to enjoy life. So thank you so much for being here. I always hung it out when we're dancing. Great job, man. Awesome.